Welcome to the world of daily life stories. Don't forget to like and subscribe so you don't miss new stories. Enjoy listening. The journey begins. Amelia Johnson smoothed the front of her navy blue blazer, her fingers trembling slightly with excitement as she adjusted her daughter's collar. Zoe, an 8-year-old with a crown of curly hair that framed her cherubic face, grinned up at her mother, her eyes wide with wonder. Beside her, Tyler, Amelia's 10-year-old son, fiddled with the retractable tray in front of his seat, his youthful curiosity bubbling over. Marcus, Amelia's husband, leaned back in his seat, his broad shoulders filling the plush first-class chair as he exhaled deeply, a rare smile softening his otherwise stoic face. "We've worked hard for this," Marcus said, his deep baritone voice steady but full of emotion. "Let's enjoy every moment." Amelia nodded, her eyes glistening with the gravity of the moment. For years, they had scrimped and saved, weathering countless struggles and sacrifices to make this family vacation possible. It wasn't just a trip, it was a celebration of perseverance, love, and unity. Flying first class was a symbolic reward for years of hard work, a testament to what they had achieved together as a family. The children marveled at the amenities around them, spacious seating, personalized entertainment systems, and the gourmet menu displayed on crisp white cards. Tyler nudged Zoe, pointing at the touchscreen in front of them. "Look. You can watch movies before we even take off." Amelia's heart swelled with pride. She had always believed in the value of exposing her children to experiences that showed them the possibilities in life. "Enjoy it, kids," she said, her voice warm. "You deserve this." The cabin buzzed with the murmurs of boarding passengers and the hum of engines preparing for takeoff. Amelia leaned toward Marcus and whispered, "Can you believe we're here? First class." Marcus reached over and gave her hand a gentle squeeze. "We've earned this," he said, his voice low but firm. "Every single bit of it." As the family settled into their seats, a flight attendant approached. She was a young woman with impeccably styled blonde hair, her uniform immaculate. Her smile was polite but strained, as if it was more a practiced facade than a genuine gesture of warmth. "Good afternoon," she began, her voice professional but devoid of warmth. "May I see your boarding passes?" Amelia blinked, surprised by the request. She glanced at Marcus, who furrowed his brow but reached for his pocket to retrieve the passes. "Here you go," he said, handing over the tickets with a calm demeanor. The attendant scanned the tickets with a furrowed brow, her lips tightening as she studied them. She glanced back at the Johnson family, her expression unreadable but tinged with something Amelia couldn't quite place. "Is there a problem?" Marcus asked, his tone even but edged with curiosity. The attendant hesitated, her gaze flickering between the tickets and the family. "I'll need to check something with my supervisor. Please excuse me for a moment." As she walked away, Marcus and Amelia exchanged uneasy glances. Zoe and Tyler, blissfully unaware of the tension brewing, continued exploring the features of their seats, giggling as they tested buttons and screens. Minutes passed, each one stretching longer than the last. Amelia tried to focus on the hum of the engines and the soothing voice of the pilot announcing the flight details over the intercom, but her mind kept replaying the attendant's expression. Was it suspicion? Confusion? Something else? Other passengers began to file into the cabin, their glances lingering on the Johnson family a little too long. Amelia felt her pulse quicken, a familiar knot of anxiety tightening in her chest. She had grown accustomed to navigating subtle and overt judgments throughout her life, but she had hoped this trip would be a reprieve, a space free of such burdens. The children were still enthralled by their surroundings, oblivious to the undercurrent of unease. Tyler turned to his father with wide eyes. "Dad, can I try the sparkling water they're serving?" "Of course, buddy," Marcus said, his voice calm but his eyes betraying his inner concern as they tracked the return of the blonde attendant. She wasn't alone this time, an older man with graying hair and a stern expression followed closely behind her. His name tag identified him as the head purser, and his demeanor radiated authority. "Mr. and Mrs. Johnson," the purser said, his tone curt but polite. "I'm going to need to have a word with you about your seating arrangements." Marcus straightened, his protective instincts kicking in. "What's the issue?" he asked, his voice steady but firm. The purser's gaze shifted to the boarding passes still in the attendant's hand. "There seems to be a discrepancy with your tickets," he said. "We'll need to verify your reservation." Amelia felt a chill run down her spine. "Discrepancy? We booked these tickets months ago. Is there a problem with our payment or reservation?" The purser didn't answer immediately, his eyes flickering toward the other passengers who were now openly watching the interaction. "It's likely just a clerical error," he said, his tone not quite convincing. "But we'll need to step aside and address it before takeoff." Marcus bristled, his frustration barely contained. "We have our boarding passes. We're seated where we're supposed to be. Why is this happening now, after we've already boarded?" The purser held up a placating hand. "Sir, I assure you this is a routine check. We ask for your cooperation to resolve it swiftly." Amelia glanced at her children, who were now looking up at their parents with confusion and worry. She forced a smile, trying to shield them from the brewing conflict. "Kids, it's okay. Everything's fine," she said, though her voice trembled slightly. As Marcus prepared to respond, a voice interrupted, cutting through the tension like a beacon of light. "Excuse me," the voice said, firm yet calm. "What seems to be the issue here?" All heads turned toward the source. A tall man dressed in a tailored suit stepped forward from a few rows back. His presence was commanding, his face familiar. Amelia's breath caught as she recognized him, a well-known celebrity who had recently made headlines for his philanthropic efforts and advocacy for social justice. "I couldn't help but overhear," the man continued, addressing the purser with a level gaze. "This family has their boarding passes, correct?" The purser hesitated, clearly taken aback by the intervention. "Yes, but..." "Then I see no reason for them to be singled out," the celebrity said firmly. His voice carried a weight of authority that silenced the murmurs around them. "If there's a legitimate issue, surely it can be resolved without disrupting their experience." Amelia felt a rush of gratitude and relief, though the tension in the air remained thick. The purser glanced at the blonde attendant, then back at the man. "Of course," he said stiffly. "We'll address this matter promptly." As the purser and attendant stepped away to confer, the celebrity turned to Amelia and Marcus, offering a reassuring smile. "Don't worry," he said. "You deserve to be here as much as anyone else." Amelia felt tears prick her eyes, the weight of the moment threatening to overwhelm her. "Thank you," she whispered, her voice barely audible. The man nodded, his expression kind but resolute. "We're all in this together," he said simply before returning to his seat. As the family waited for the situation to resolve, Amelia reached for Marcus's hand, squeezing it tightly. Despite the turbulence of the moment, they were reminded of the strength they carried as a family, and of the power of allies who stood up for what was right. A storm of perceptions. The purser and the blonde attendant disappeared down the aisle, their hushed voices barely audible as they debated the discrepancy. Amelia watched them go, her chest tight with a mixture of anxiety and anger. Around her, passengers whispered to one another, their eyes darting to her family and then quickly away, as if they didn't want to be caught staring. The murmur was like a low buzz in her ears, growing louder with each passing second. Marcus noticed her unease and leaned in. "Stay calm," he said softly, his voice a steadying force. "Let's not let them ruin this moment for us." But Amelia wasn't sure she could stay calm. Her mind raced with questions. Was this about their race? Did someone assume they couldn't afford to be in first class? Or was it just a bizarre coincidence? The thought of her children being subjected to this scrutiny made her blood boil. Tyler tugged on her sleeve. "Mom, why did that man talk to us like that? Did we do something wrong?" Amelia forced a smile, crouching to meet his gaze. "No, sweetheart," she said gently. "We didn't do anything wrong. Sometimes, people just make mistakes." Zoe chimed in, her voice tinged with uncertainty. "Are they going to make us leave?" Amelia's heart ached at the fear in her daughter's voice. Of course not, she said firmly. We belong here, just like everyone else. The celebrity who had come to their defense earlier caught Amelia's eye from his seat a few rows back. He gave her a small nod, a silent reassurance that he was still watching, still ready to step in if needed. His presence was a lifeline in an otherwise isolating moment. The purser returned a few minutes later, his expression carefully neutral. Mrs. Johnson, Mr. Johnson, he began, his tone more measured this time. We've reviewed your tickets and confirmed that everything is in order. I apologize for the misunderstanding. Marcus narrowed his eyes, his tone clipped. What exactly was the misunderstanding? The purser hesitated, clearly unprepared for the direct question. It appears there was a mix-up in the reservation system that flagged your tickets for verification. It's been resolved now. Amelia wasn't convinced. A mix-up? Why weren't other passengers flagged? The purser shifted uncomfortably. I can assure you it was nothing personal, he said, though the words rang hollow. Amelia's frustration bubbled over. It certainly felt personal, she said, her voice low but firm. We were treated as though we didn't belong here. Do you have any idea how that feels? The purser looked flustered, as if he hadn't anticipated this level of pushback. I'm deeply sorry for any inconvenience caused, he said, offering a small bow. Please let us know if there's anything we can do to make your flight more comfortable. Before Amelia could respond, Marcus placed a hand on her arm. Let it go, he said quietly. We're here now. Amelia took a deep breath, swallowing her anger. She nodded. Reluctantly, knowing Marcus was right. She couldn't let this moment define their trip. The purser retreated, leaving the family to settle back into their seats. The buzz of conversation around them slowly died down, though Amelia could still feel the weight of curious glances. She hated the feeling of being scrutinized, of being an unwilling subject of judgment. As the plane prepared for takeoff, the celebrity stood again and walked down the aisle, stopping beside Marcus's seat. Mind if I sit for a moment? He asked. Marcus nodded, gesturing to the empty seat beside him. Of course. The man introduced himself properly this time. I'm James, he said, extending a hand. I just wanted to make sure you're all okay. Amelia smiled gratefully. Thank you, James. We're fine now, but it was unsettling. James nodded, his expression thoughtful. It's unacceptable, really. But unfortunately, it's not uncommon. I've seen this kind of thing before. Tyler, who had been quiet until now, looked up at James with wide eyes. Are you famous? He asked. James chuckled. Some people think so, he said with a wink. But what's more important is standing up when you see something wrong. Zoe tilted her head. Why did you help us? She asked innocently. James's expression softened. Because it's the right thing to do, he said simply. And because I believe everyone deserves to be treated with respect. The conversation lightened the mood, and soon, the children were laughing at James's stories of his travels and adventures. Amelia felt her tension ease as she watched her kids' faces light up. For the first time since boarding the plane, she allowed herself to relax. As James returned to his seat, Amelia turned to Marcus. Maybe this was a blessing in disguise, she said softly. A reminder that there are still good people out there. Marcus nodded, his eyes reflecting the same sense of hope. And that we're stronger than any of this. The plane began its ascent, the ground falling away beneath them as they climbed into the clouds. Amelia glanced out the window, her heart swelling with a renewed sense of determination. They had faced obstacles before, and they had always come out stronger. This would be no different. For the rest of the flight, the Johnsons enjoyed the comforts of first class, reclaiming the joy they had felt at the start of their journey. Amelia watched her children drift off to sleep, their faces peaceful, and she felt a deep sense of gratitude for her family, for their resilience, and for the unexpected allies who had stood by them when they needed it most. Echoes of a dream. As the plane leveled off and the cabin crew began their service, the tension of the earlier incident lingered like a shadow. Amelia tried to focus on the small joys of the experience, the soft hum of the engines, the plush comfort of the seats, and the delectable scent of gourmet meals being prepared in the galley. Yet, every now and then, her gaze would drift to her children, and a flicker of worry would creep into her mind. What impression had this incident left on them? Marcus, ever the steady presence, leaned toward her. "You're thinking too much again," he said with a small smile, his voice low to avoid waking Zoe and Tyler, who had fallen asleep after their excitement had waned. "I can't help it," Amelia admitted. "They're young, Marcus. They might not fully understand what happened, but they'll remember how it felt." Marcus placed a hand over hers. "That's why we teach them to hold their heads high," he said. "To know their worth, no matter what." Amelia nodded, comforted by his words, but still restless. She reached for the in-flight magazine tucked into the seat pocket, flipping through the glossy pages in search of distraction. Her eyes fell on an article about luxury travel, complete with smiling families enjoying exotic destinations. The irony wasn't lost on her, those families didn't seem to face the challenges hers had just experienced. The flight attendants began serving dinner, their demeanor more attentive now, as if compensating for earlier missteps. The blonde attendant from before approached their row, her smile faltering slightly as she addressed them. "Mr. and Mrs. Johnson, we have a selection of meals prepared for you. Tonight's options include roasted salmon, herb-crusted chicken, or a vegetarian pasta primavera." Amelia hesitated, searching for any trace of insincerity in the attendant's tone. Finding none, she decided to let the earlier incident rest for now. "I'll have the salmon, please," she said, her voice calm but firm. "Chicken for me," Marcus added, his tone neutral. The children stirred as the aroma of food reached them. Zoe blinked up at Amelia, rubbing her eyes. "Mommy, is it time to eat?" Amelia smiled, smoothing Zoe's hair. "Yes, sweetie. They have pasta for you and Tyler. Does that sound good?" Zoe nodded sleepily, and Tyler mumbled his agreement from the other side of Marcus. The family settled into their meal, the rich flavors and warm atmosphere gradually soothing their nerves. As they ate, James, the celebrity who had intervened earlier, stopped by their row again. This time, he brought a glass of wine for Marcus and Amelia, placing it on their tray tables with a kind smile. "I thought you could use a toast," he said. Amelia chuckled softly. "You've done enough already, James. But thank you." James took a seat on the edge of the aisle, his presence as unassuming as it was commanding. "You know," he began, "when I was a kid, my parents worked hard to give us a good life. We didn't fly first class, heck, we didn't fly at all. But they taught me something I never forgot." Marcus tilted his head, intrigued. "What's that?" James's gaze softened. "That your worth isn't determined by where you sit, but by how you carry yourself. Whether you're in the back of the bus or the front of the plane, you deserve respect." Amelia leaned forward, touched by his words. "That's powerful," she said. "And true. But it's not always easy to teach that to children, especially when the world tries to tell them otherwise." James nodded. "It's not easy. But it's necessary. Moments like these are tough, but they're also opportunities to show them strength, resilience, and grace." Tyler, now fully awake and listening, piped up. "So, when people are mean, we just have to be strong?" James turned to him, his expression kind but serious. "Being strong doesn't mean ignoring it," he said. "It means standing up for yourself and others in the right way. And sometimes, it means letting someone else step in to help." Tyler seemed to consider this, nodding thoughtfully. Zoe, ever the curious one, asked, "Why do people think we don't belong here?" Amelia's heart clenched at the question, but James answered before she could. "Because sometimes, people judge others based on what they see, not who they are. But that's their mistake, not yours." Zoe looked up at her mother, seeking confirmation. Amelia smiled, brushing a strand of hair from her daughter's face. "He's right, baby. It's their mistake. The conversation carried on, weaving through light-hearted stories and deeper reflections. By the time James returned to his seat, the Johnsons felt a renewed sense of camaraderie, not just within their family, but with a stranger who had shown them kindness when they needed it most. As the cabin lights dimmed and the hum of conversation faded, Amelia found herself staring out the window at the dark expanse of sky. She thought about all they had endured to reach this moment, the sacrifices, the late nights, the doubts, and the determination. This trip was supposed to be a celebration, a symbol of everything they had worked for. And despite the rocky start, it still could be. She turned to Marcus, who was already watching her. "What are you thinking?" he asked. "That this isn't just about us," she said. "It's about showing our kids, and ourselves, that we belong anywhere we choose to be." Marcus smiled, his expression a mix of pride and love. "We've always known that. Now it's their turn to learn." Amelia nodded, resting her head on his shoulder. "We'll show them." As the plane soared through the night, carrying them closer to their destination, Amelia felt a spark of hope reignite within her. This was more than a journey, it was a statement, a testament to their resilience and the unyielding power of love and unity. And no one could take that away from them. A lesson in resilience. The dawn broke as the plane descended, golden rays spilling across the cabin. Amelia stirred from a light sleep, blinking at the soft glow that illuminated the plush seats of first class. Beside her, Marcus still dozed, his face relaxed in a way she hadn't seen in weeks. Across the aisle, Tyler and Zoe were huddled together, whispering excitedly as they peered out the window at the clouds below. Despite the rocky start to their journey, the children's spirits seemed unbroken, their resilience a testament to the environment Amelia and Marcus had worked so hard to create. As the flight attendants prepared the cabin for landing, Amelia's thoughts drifted back to the incident that had marred their boarding experience. She replayed the moment in her mind, dissecting every expression, every word. Part of her wanted to let it go, to bury the memory and focus on the beautiful vacation ahead. But another part, a stronger, fiercer part, knew she couldn't ignore it. Ignoring it would mean accepting it, and that wasn't a lesson she wanted her children to take away from this trip. Marcus stirred, stretching his broad shoulders as he woke. He glanced at her, his eyes still soft with sleep. "Morning," he said, his voice husky. "Morning," she replied, leaning in for a quick kiss. "Sleep well?" "Well enough," he said, his gaze drifting to the kids. "They seem to be back to normal." Amelia followed his gaze, smiling as she watched Tyler point something out to Zoe, who giggled in response. "Kids bounce back faster than we do," she said. "But I still think we need to talk to them about what happened." Marcus nodded, his expression turning serious. "Agreed. They need to understand, but we also need to be careful not to let it overshadow the trip." The plane landed smoothly, and the Johnson family disembarked, their spirits lifted by the warm tropical air that greeted them at the terminal. The airport was bustling, the energy vibrant and alive. Amelia couldn't help but feel a spark of excitement as they made their way to baggage claim, their suitcases packed with swimsuits, sunscreen, and dreams of adventure. A sleek black car was waiting to take them to their resort, the driver a cheerful man named Eduardo who chatted animatedly with the kids about local attractions. As the car weaved through lush greenery and colorful streets, Amelia felt the tension in her shoulders begin to ease. This was what they had worked for, a chance to escape the grind of daily life and immerse themselves in something beautiful. The resort was a vision of luxury, its sprawling grounds dotted with palm trees, sparkling pools, and cabanas overlooking the ocean. The staff greeted them with cold towels and fruity drinks, their warmth and hospitality a welcome contrast to the cold professionalism of the airline crew. As the family settled into their suite, complete with ocean views and enough space for the kids to have their own room, Amelia gathered everyone on the balcony. "Before we dive into this amazing vacation," she began, "I think we need to talk about what happened on the plane." Tyler and Zoe exchanged glances, their expressions a mix of curiosity and apprehension. Marcus nodded, his steady presence giving Amelia the confidence to continue. When the flight attendants asked to see our tickets again and again, she said, it wasn't because of anything we did wrong. Sometimes, people make assumptions about others based on what they see, like the color of our skin, or the way we look. Zoe frowned, her brow furrowed. But that's not fair. We bought the tickets just like everyone else. You're absolutely right, Marcus said, his voice firm. It's not fair. And it's not okay. But it's important that you understand something: we belong anywhere we choose to be. Don't ever let anyone make you feel like you don't. Tyler tilted his head, his expression thoughtful. Is that why the famous guy helped us? Amelia smiled. Yes, Tyler. He saw something wrong, and he spoke up. That's what being an ally means, standing up for others when they need it. Zoe's eyes lit up. So, if we see someone being treated unfairly, we should help them too. Exactly, Marcus said. But it's not just about helping others. It's also about standing up for yourself. If you know you're right, don't be afraid to speak up. Tyler nodded slowly. I get it. It's like being brave, even when it's hard. Exactly, Amelia said, pride swelling in her chest. And remember, you're not alone. We're a team, and we'll always stand together. The conversation seemed to settle something in the children, their questions giving way to understanding. Zoe leaned against her mother, her small hand clutching Amelia's. I'm glad we're here, she said softly. This is the best trip ever. Amelia kissed the top of her daughter's head, her heart full. It's going to get even better, sweetheart. The family spent the afternoon exploring the resort, from the sparkling infinity pool to the soft white sand of the beach. Tyler and Zoe squealed with delight as they splashed in the waves, their laughter a balm to Amelia's soul. Marcus joined in, tossing the kids into the water as they shrieked with glee. For a moment, the worries of the world melted away, replaced by the simple joy of being together. That evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, painting the sky in hues of orange and pink, the Johnsons gathered around a bonfire on the beach. They roasted marshmallows and shared stories, their laughter mingling with the sound of waves lapping at the shore. Amelia gazed at her family, her heart swelling with gratitude. Despite the challenges, despite the moments of doubt and fear, they had made it. They were here, together, stronger than ever. As the first stars began to twinkle in the night sky, Amelia made a silent promise to herself: no matter what obstacles they faced, she would always fight for her family's place in the world. Because they deserved to shine, just like those stars, unwavering, brilliant, and free. A legacy of belonging. The final days of the Johnsons' vacation unfolded like a dream, each moment more magical than the last. From snorkeling in crystalline waters to exploring vibrant local markets bursting with colors and sounds, the family immersed themselves in the joy of discovery. Yet, beneath the surface of laughter and adventure, Amelia and Marcus were keenly aware of the lessons this trip had already brought, lessons they wanted to carry home, not just for their family but for the world around them. On their last morning, the Johnsons decided to take a walk along the beach, before the sun climbed too high. The early light bathed the sand in a soft glow, and the air was alive with the gentle rhythm of waves. Zoe skipped ahead, her small feet leaving delicate imprints in the sand, while Tyler walked beside her, carrying a stick he used to draw patterns in the wet earth. Marcus strolled at Amelia's side, their hands intertwined as they followed their children. Do you feel it too? Amelia asked, her voice barely louder than the waves. Marcus looked at her, his expression thoughtful. Feel what? Like something changed on this trip, she said. Not just for us, but in us. Marcus nodded slowly. Yeah. It's like, we've been reminded of something we always knew, but forgot for a while. That no matter where we are or what people think, we define our own worth. Amelia smiled, a sense of peace washing over her. I think the kids feel it too. They're carrying themselves differently. Because they've seen it in us, Marcus said, squeezing her hand. And because they know they're not alone. Ahead of them, Zoe crouched to examine a small crab skittering across the sand, her giggles carried back to them on the breeze. Tyler joined her, his voice animated as he explained what he'd learned about crabs from a nature documentary. Watching them, Amelia felt a surge of pride. Despite everything, her children had held on to their sense of wonder and joy. And they'd learned something even more valuable, the strength that came from knowing they belonged, no matter the circumstances. Later that day, as they packed their bags and prepared to leave the resort, Amelia found herself reflecting on the trip's defining moment, their encounter with James on the plane. His words and actions had left a lasting impression, not just because of what he'd done for them, but because of what he'd inspired in her. She made a decision then, one that had been simmering in the back of her mind since that flight. She wanted to do something more, something that would ensure other families like hers wouldn't have to face the same challenges alone. The flight home was smooth and uneventful, a far cry from their journey out. The flight attendants treated the Johnsons with warmth and professionalism, and the family settled into their seats with an ease that felt like redemption. Tyler and Zoe were engrossed in their entertainment systems, their laughter bubbling up now and then as they watched animated movies. Amelia and Marcus shared a quiet toast with sparkling water, their eyes meeting in a silent promise to keep building on what this trip had taught them. As the plane touched down and taxied to the gate, Amelia felt a sense of clarity she hadn't felt in years. This was more than a trip, it was a turning point. And she was ready to act on it. A new mission. Back home, life resumed its usual rhythm, but Amelia couldn't shake the determination that had taken root during their trip. She began researching ways to advocate for fair treatment and equal access in travel, immersing herself in stories of families who had faced similar challenges. Each account strengthened her resolve. She reached out to James, the celebrity who had stepped in for them on the plane, finding his contact information through a social media platform where he frequently engaged with his followers. To her surprise, he responded almost immediately, his message warm and encouraging. "I remember you and your family," he wrote. "Your strength was inspiring. Let me know how I can help." With James's support, Amelia launched a campaign called Belong Anywhere, a movement dedicated to promoting inclusivity and combating discrimination in travel. The initiative gained traction quickly, fueled by stories from people of all backgrounds who had faced barriers or biases while traveling. Amelia's message resonated: travel should be a joy, not a battle. We all belong. Marcus, ever her steadfast partner, took on the logistics of the campaign, managing outreach and partnerships. Zoe and Tyler even got involved, drawing pictures and writing short notes about their own experiences, which Amelia shared on the campaign's website. The simplicity and sincerity of the children's words struck a chord with readers, inspiring others to share their own stories. The ripple effect. Months later, the Johnsons were invited to speak at a travel conference where Amelia had been asked to present Belong Anywhere to industry leaders. As they stood on the stage together, Amelia felt a surge of pride, not just in her family, but in the collective effort that had brought them to this moment. She began her speech by recounting their flight, her voice steady as she described the scrutiny they had faced and the impact it had on her family. "It wasn't just about us being asked for our tickets," she said. "It was about what that moment represented, a challenge to our right to be where we were. But it also became an opportunity to stand up, to speak out, and to build something better." The audience was captivated, their applause thunderous as Amelia concluded her speech with a call to action. "We all have the power to create a world where everyone feels they belong, whether it's on a plane, in a hotel, or anywhere else. Let's use that power." Afterward, attendees lined up to thank the Johnsons, sharing their own experiences and pledging their support for the campaign. Among them was a representative from the airline they had flown with, who expressed deep regret for the incident and vowed to implement new training programs for their staff. As the family left the conference, Tyler turned to his parents with a grin. "Does this mean we're famous now?" Amelia laughed, ruffling his hair. "Not famous, buddy. But maybe we've started something important." Zoe chimed in, her eyes shining. "We helped people, didn't we?" "You did," Marcus said, his voice full of pride. "And you'll keep helping people. This is just the beginning." The journey continues. Back at home, life returned to its usual rhythm, but the Johnsons' journey was far from over. The Belong Anywhere campaign grew into a movement, sparking conversations and driving changes across the travel industry. And while there were still challenges to face, the family knew they were stronger together. One evening, as they sat on their porch watching the sunset, Amelia looked around at her family and felt a deep sense of gratitude. They had turned a moment of adversity into a mission of purpose, a legacy that would empower not just their children, but countless others. "This is what it's all about," she said softly, leaning into Marcus. "Building something that lasts." "And knowing we belong," Marcus added, his voice steady. "Anywhere," Amelia finished, her heart full. As the stars began to dot the sky, the Johnsons sat together in quiet contentment, their journey one of resilience, love, and the unyielding belief that they, like everyone, belonged wherever their dreams took them.